right this second.
If the intro is playing,
We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, anime, film,
the intro is
TV,
playing,
books, everything. Which one of you are watching our own show? Is that you, Cliff?
that would be me, and I apologize. Today is my day for apologizing, it seems. Hello, everybody. Yes, we are here on a live stream show, and I was just talking into the Inception mirror for just a second, and I shouldn't have done that. But hello, everybody. Welcome to another weekly conversation with delicate rumors and also confirmed information from a while ago and some surprising news, maybe, because we're a lot closer today to understanding the very good things and very cool, ambitious things that they're doing more than yesterday. Today is a whole new day, and we learned a lot.
We learned a lot. We've been learning a lot over the last 6 months or so, and today we are joined by Matt from Nerd of the Rings, the #1 Tolkien YouTube channel, and still growing.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
So last time we talked to you, you had just crossed 200,000 subscribers, and less than a month later, what are you up to now?
Let me pull it up. I'm at 287 at the moment.
Holy moly, 287,000 subscribers. This is amazing, but it's not as amazing as the big story of the day. Cliff, can you believe this? Jeff Bezos went to space.
Oh, no, almost space. He went to almost space. Look,
I saw him floating in the.
It's a lot of trouble for 10 minutes. Can we just acknowledge that, like, it's a really expensive 10-minute trip.
it really is. And you know what? He didn't even end up stranded in the Delta Quadrant. So it was hardly worth it.
That's no way to talk about your Uncle Jeff now, Cliff.
Right. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay.
I assume that's how you get these rumors, is from your Uncle Jeff, right? Isn't that how this works?
Well, we did.
No.
We had hope that Jeff would drop the Lord of the Rings trailer from space today.
That would have been pretty cool.
Because it is Comic-Con week, and we have a panel at the end of the week, and lots of things will be announced this week for many other things. But he didn't do that. He just threw some foam balls, and he threw Skittles in people's mouths, which I thought was weird.
Mm.
But
I think it'd be much more impressive to do that with gravity, though.
Well,
throw Skittles in people's mouths. I mean,
we are already getting text messages on the hotline. The number is on the screen, 530-64-FRODO. That's really our phone number. And we want to hear all of your opinions in the chat room. I'm watching on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Periscope of the latest news that we're going to go through. But we got other breaking news, Cliff. Right now, if you can believe it, Brennan, our regular in our chat room, says JC, the owner of Scum and Villainy, is now the first ever Star Wars champion on the Schmodown YouTube channel. It's a big trivia contest. So congrats to JC for knowing Star Wars.
Nice.
I'm very proud of JC as a friend, as an associate there at the Scum and Villainy Cantina. He's a wonderful fellow, and I'm not the least bit surprised that he has a Stephen Colbert level of Star Wars ephemera living up in his cranium. I'm sure he's good for it. I'm not the least bit surprised. But you know what? Other than that, we actually have to, for the interest of not really disclosure, but for the interest of disclosure, we have been receiving from a lot of different sources. Justin actually has been receiving a lot of information and some gossip and some rumors, and then all of a sudden I received some little bits, and some of our other editors who are working at theonering.net had also received information. And then over a period of time, we corroborated everything that we could, and Justin decided it was time to actually release the Kraken, or to release the information. And boy, oh boy, the number one most exciting and interesting thing to me is really something that we should have seen coming a mile away. Every Instagram post that every one of the actors on Amazon Studios show has always been showing us copies of the Silmarillion. So we actually learned that legally, in real life terms, the Tolkien estate has legally licensed some content that was never, ever previously licensed from Unfinished Tales and from the Silmarillion. And that, to me, is the biggest piece of news. It's so exciting to know, because everybody else was speculating for over a year now that the studio could only play around in the sandbox of the appendices.
Mm-hmm.
But that is in addition to. They have the appendices and the rights to everything in the Lord of the Rings appendices, and they have additional things. So now we confirm a fan theory that's been floating around, and it's also very, very encouraging. This is where Gandalf's little voice says, that is an encouraging thought. Take it away, Matt.
Has Nerd of the Rings covered the stories in Unfinished Tales and the end of the Silmarillion?
So yeah, I've done quite a range. I try to mix it up between first, second, third age stuff. I have a fair number of characters that I've highlighted that we'll likely see in the show, like Elrond and Galadriel. Gosh, I'm blanking now. Glorfindel. We'll probably see Glorfindel. Hopefully, I would love that.
And
yeah. So I'm planning a big video that's going to be like history of Numenor. That will be. I have these bigger ones. I have to kind of plan ahead, because they take a fair amount of time. So I gotta sprinkle in some shorter ones to make some room.
Well, there are a bunch of people in the chat room. Great to see you, Princess Toy Nerd, Stephen, Troy, a bunch of people in the chat room. Just to catch everybody up, I'm sorry we skipped a note, but big news today. We are reporting on the OneRing.net 20 really new details from Lord of the Rings, including character confirmations, confirmation about what the nudity will be in the show. It's not at all what anyone thought it would be. And halflings are going to be in the show. This is the biggest info drop, data dump, whatever you want to call it. This is the biggest leak in the Amazon ship so far. We don't have any photos. We don't have anything else other than reports from the set. And the way these came to us over the last, I'd say, 6 weeks, we've been getting DMs, emails to our hotline spymaster at the OneRing.net, all anonymous, some not anonymous, but request to be anonymized. And so what we did is the editorial team that took some of their things. I've been checking the DMs on Twitter and Instagram, and I put those in the list. And Cliff heard some stuff, and we all kind of like noodled and said, all right, let's go back to other sources that we have and see if this checks out. Because Cliff, you know some people on production that are deep in production. I know some people just from our friends in New Zealand. We know so many people that live there and work there that might be involved in the set. Can't really confirm or anything like that. So we checked it out with people that have seen actual footage from the TV show. Actual footage has been edited, has been shown publicly to Americans somewhere. We can't say where. And everything that we've reported today checks out. And things that didn't check out, we did not report. So we might know more than we're saying, but we're not ready to tell you because no one else would say if it was true or not. This is only the stuff that multiple people from different people I don't know Cliff knows, people that Cliff doesn't know that I know, and
right.
Matt over here doesn't know anybody.
I don't know any, yeah.
So it's a huge thing. So you know what? We've got 20 new details. I think let's just go down the list, and I think that's where Cliff was starting. So if we go down,
Yeah.
again, you can see this article at theonering.net. I think Matt brought it up on his computer as well. The first big bullet point is confirm that.
Well, actually, the first big thing is to realize that this isn't the classic tradition of having your fandom, your entire community of fandom, totally engaged and excited and wanting to offer support to the artists who are working so hard on this. The whole point of this conversation is not to, hurt anybody or to get anyone in trouble or to spread rumors and cause any friction. The point of this, quite literally, is a 20-year-old exercise in how the fans, the real community in our audience, because it's not just random audience, this is a community of people, and they want to acknowledge the artists and the directors and the cast. They want to acknowledge them and shout their support across thousands and thousands of miles to a tiny little emerald green island way down there. And just so that everybody knows up front, this is a rather egalitarian thing, in my mind anyways, that the fans want to embrace and they want to shout their support and embrace their own curiosity. And that's what it's all about. And at the start of the show, I just have to say, the idea of the studio getting to expand licensing rights into other stories like the Silmarillion or materials from Unfinished Tales has always been the biggest thing for me, because it means the writer's room is not going to be stuck with just the appendices. They can now write and include many more people and things. It's fantastic.
Amazon
really
has already alluded that this show is going to be about Numenor. They included Numenor on the map. They said we're going to Numenor. It has never been a guess that we will or will not go to Numenor. We are going to Numenor. Robert Hill in the chat room says, "I wonder if Amazon will actually show the sinking of Numenor." I can say with probably 80% certainty that we will see the destruction of Numenor. We've heard rumors that the show starts with the sinking of Numenor, and then there's a time skip, and then Galadriel set out on a mission to figure out what happened, and the story is told through the ancient scripts and tales and tales handed down. But I don't know if that's true. But we are going to Numenor. We will see the sinking of Numenor. And the reason I think that we will see the sinking of Numenor early is because early on in the production, Amazon had built one of the largest water tanks in film history down there in New Zealand. And the stunts were so crazy that one of the biggest and best aquatic stunt people in the world, someone that had worked on both Avatar and Aquaman movies, got crazy hurt. And it was just reported last week that she got a settlement out of Amazon for $500,000 to take care of her surgeries, and she's doing well, and she's back here in Venice. So they've hired some of the best aquatic stunt people to film whatever they were filming for J.A. Bayona's pilot. We're going to get into that pilot shortly. So I am seeing your texts. I'm seeing some calls come in. We'll open the hotline in a little bit, but I love to hear your comments and see. Andrew says the Numenorians are mariners, so they use ships a lot. Yeah. You also have to have good stunt people to jump off the ship when it's burning up, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things I was just thinking was, with Numenor being such a naval force, we could see something we've never seen in Middle Earth before, which is a full-on naval battle. So that very well could have been, what they were filming that, Justin, you were talking about there.
So a full-on master and commander type movie,
if you will. Yeah.
That would be amazing. All right, let's get into it. All right, Cliff, you just said the first big bullet point is Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales have officially been licensed. The other thing we learned recently, Amazon does have merchandising rights, and they are shopping them around right now. So we will get merch from this show. I don't. I don't.
With Prime shipping.
With Prime shipping, order all the Shire potatoes you want. No, I don't know if we're going to get Shire potatoes in this. And honestly, how does a toy company determine what to make if we don't know who the stars are and we don't know what characters are going to be the main characters? And there's so much. You don't know who the fans are going to like. So how do you know what toy to make? So I don't know if we're going to get toys this year or next year, but I think the license is being shopped around. So when the show drops, there's an obvious fan favorite of scenes and characters and creatures, then things can be made. Cliff, what's the next bullet point here that we learned?
Before we go on to the next bullet point, I want to call out to the live chat. It wouldn't make much sense to have the sinking of Numenor in the very first season, because that marks the end of the Second Age. And even as another person said, if they're not going to show Sauron, Anatar, in the first season, then why he's intricately involved in the downfall of Numenor. So I'm not so sure we're going to see the downfall of Numenor early on, but we don't know if there's going to be a flashback. Even Peter Jackson went back to the end of the Second Age, at the very beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. So there is such a thing as jumping back and forth in time. Obviously.
Yeah, we don't know. So
we don't know.
The third big thing we learned is that there are actually 3 Tolkien scholars and lore experts on set. Now, Cliff, this was the biggest thing that you've been championing for the last year, ever since the news of Tom Shippey leaving the production. Like, you're like, who's defending Tolkien? Does this bullet point give you more confidence?
I wasn't the only one. Everybody on the internet was asking the same question and trying to, right, Matt? Everyone was saying,
yeah, absolutely.
Who don't you have a Stephen Colbert tucked away into the cubbyhole in the writer's room? Everybody was thinking that.
Where's your Philippa Boyens? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's encouraging to think that they didn't want to have just one person. They had 3. And that means more brain power, more brain cells. And that's really cool. It's really cool, actually.
When you say Philippa Boyens, what do you mean by that, Matt?
Well, she's the the Tolkien nerd of the trifecta of Fran Walsh, Peter Jackson, and Philippa Boyens. So yeah, she had, if you recall from the special features, she had a legendary trivia contest with Stephen Colbert that was behind closed doors that was said to be quite epic in its complexity. I'm sure either one of them would totally destroy any of us, probably.
And we'll remind you that Philippa Boyens has been hired as a lore consultant on Warner Brothers' War of the Hurim movie, currently in production. Nothing to do with Amazon's show. But the interesting thing is, Cliff, as we've been looking back at the 20-year anniversary of Lord of the Rings this year, we've had many interviews and conversations with the studio executives, with the production team, Richard Taylor from Weta Workshop, with actors, everybody. And it was interesting looking back and seeing how New Line had positioned Philippa Boyens, even as early as Cannes 2001, that she was the Tolkien expert.
Yes.
So there was someone out front in the earliest days of PR and marketing for New Line Cinema. They had put Philippa out front saying, yes, I am an expert. Yes, I love Tolkien. And the fans and that carried through all the way, like you said, Matt, to the appendices. So,
but it was also Peter Jackson himself in almost every interview who was telling people, I need to extol the virtues of Philippa Boyens. She is the hardcore Tolkien nerd that we had to bring in to work with us. Peter was also instrumental in cementing this outward vision that we had, and I'm glad that he did.
Yeah, everyone is a fan. Some people in the chat room are saying Tom Shippey is likely one of 3 Tolkien scholars. Tom Shippey is not involved in the show anymore. Marcus Makis is saying nerd is not scholar. Well, look, there are we've had them on the show here, right? PhD scholars in Tolkien studies. Dr. Dimitrofimi. We've had the Tolkien professor Corey Olson. We've had Luke Shelton, PhD. We've had so many actual Tolkien scholars. Just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean there aren't really smart scholar people. So it's just really good to hear that they are involved in the show. I just wish Amazon would put them forward.
Yeah, I honestly I don't blame them for keeping them more anonymous, at least for now. Maybe that'll come out, after the show comes out. I think you talk about when Peter Jackson's films, it was a far less cynical time in terms of film coverage. If you put these people out there, then next thing you know, you're going to have people trying to tear them down with their qualifications and stuff. Who are these people? And like, I kind of understand, and this goes for the entire show, why they're so tight-lipped on everything. And I know we'll get into it in a minute, but the fact that they do that they've been doing, sorry, I've got a little one here getting ready for bed. The fact that they do decoy shoots to throw people off is hilarious to me and awesome.
Well, Game of Thrones famously did that, but we'll get there in a minute. The next bullet point, Cliff, it says the Tolkien estate is said to be very, very happy with how things are progressing. Have you?
No, that's a big piece of information, and it also, now join me on this speculation, Matt. I would imagine that the Tolkien estate has never, ever, ever had any extension of their own agency at any point in time. Not when John Borman was writing that pornographic script in the 70s, not when the turnaround happened and the project went over to Bakshi, not when Rankin and Bass was making television animated features, not when New Line Cinema was working with Peter. Never, ever at any point, and certainly not with those little Russian TV adaptations that we like to make fun of.
But Cliff,
no one at the Tolkien estate has ever. Well, no, I'm just saying that the Tolkien estate has never, ever had any agency at all. So the fact that they can do that now is a big psychological thing for the people in the Tolkien estate to say, we finally have veto power. We can finally get involved and say, no, you cannot play fast and loose with, the timeline and the history of Arda, which is also something that Tom Shippey shared with the German fan site in a long conversation way back, right? So what do you think, Matt? It's kind of like, I'm sure the Tolkien estate is probably thinking, wow, this is what it feels like to actually be in the room with the creatives.
Yeah. And I honestly, that was one of the bullet points that drew my eye most. The fact that the Tolkien estate is happy with how things are going. I don't know if it will set everyone completely at ease. Everyone's going to be nervous until they actually see it. Well, a fair number of people will be, nervous regardless until we actually see it.
That's fair.
And I don't think, I was just thinking like Tolkien estate is kind of like this abstract term now. I don't know who that refers to. It used to be like, oh, Christopher Tolkien is the guy. I don't know who those guys are, but I mean, it's still the Tolkien estate. So there's still a level of trust I feel that is warranted there. So yeah, that makes me feel good to know that they're happy with how the show is going. I don't think, if you have caught, some of the more sensationalist stuff, all gloom and doom about this show. I don't think if that was truly the road it was going down and this was doomed to failure, that the Tolkien estate would be saying they were happy with it.
Right. Indeed. Yep. The logic is right there. It's something that you could assume without us having anybody send us a spy report. It's something we could have maybe pieced together ourselves, that at any time that the writers or the producers do something wrong, the Tolkien estate would stop it. they would stop it, and the production would not do it.
And
so that's really intriguing.
Yeah,
we knew from day one in the first press release when Amazon announced the deal.
Yes.
In the first press release, it was stated that the Tolkien estate has rights and will be involved in the creative process to either provide or limit additional licensing and story points as neat on a case-by-case basis. That's how it was presented. So we always knew that Tolkien estate, but it sounds like beyond just like, hey, here's a script, here's a story concept we want to pursue. It sounds like the Tolkien estate is actually deeply involved throughout this process. And as you know, filmmaking is a push and pull, and things change, and you get new scripts every day, which we'll go into right now. The next big thing, men, elves, and dwarves have their own sequestered production units, and scripts are only digitally shared among actors, so they can see who reads them. What does this mean? So sequestered production units, as from what I understand, this means that all of the scenes with men have a director and a production team and a camera guy dedicated, and all the scenes with elves have a producer and a second unit director and a cameraman dedicated to them, and then all the scenes with dwarves have a separate third unit. So it sounds like they don't talk to each other, which means the storylines are just on each of their own paths. Now, this kind of gives an immense scale to the show. Matt, maybe you remember how many units were filming at any one time on Return of the King? I mean, they had like 6 units at some point, I think.
Was it? I honestly have no idea.
but
I know, yeah. Gosh, I have no idea, honestly. I mean, that's an intriguing bit, because it also, further separates actors from different different people, and not only actors but also production units. Kind of is a precautionary, I guess, to limit spoilers and stuff too.
Right.
You can't.
Getting into the lore now, Cliff. This is a production detail. This is just kind of like a technical production detail. But connecting this to Tolkien's lore, if you have men, elves, and dwarves all have their own production units, and they're not really talking to each other, and they're not really sharing things, and they have their own scripts each. Does this align with what we know Tolkien wrote about the Second Age, where there weren't a lot of alliances and peoples of Middle-earth were just kind of living their lives?
Perhaps. You could squeeze out that supposition if you want, but I get a feeling that on a big production like this, most of these decisions are made to keep expenses down and to keep a smooth, very quickly flowing process of getting things ready, getting the lights and the set ready, and getting it shot and done. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the writers are doing some work so that episodes are told just from the point of view of different people. Yes, in Professor Tolkien's exploration of the Second Age, there's fragmented groups of kingdoms, and people who are migrating from one area to another, and it's there are new kingdoms being founded and colonialization happening, where they encounter other, the Numenorians run around the planet and meet other people. So you know what? I can't decide, because I don't have enough information in front of me, if this is just a practical production thing where they want to streamline their effort and get as much dialogue shot at once, or whether they're really trying to silo, keep different characters separate from each other, so that their work reflects the story. But I could not imagine a $1 billion TV series trying to do that. They're probably just trying to streamline getting everything done quickly and cheaply.
You know, you
Yes.
might be right. There's some great comments in the chat room. Troy in the chat room says maybe it's just a way to prevent leaks. Like
Maybe.
if the dwarves leak, then the elf stuff won't leak.
Possible, yeah.
I
think, yeah, I think, you know, like Cliff said, I think they would prioritize efficiency probably over, you know, leaks. They've got NDAs in place and, you know, all kinds of threats, I'm sure, if people leak stuff. But yeah, I do wonder, like looking at what you said, Justin, you know, does this give us some clues as to what time period this could be in the Second Age? And I've often thought in my mental wanderings that we could jump into the show possibly when Numenor's at the height of its power, but it's starting to fracture. So we've got on one side we have the faithful, which will eventually give us people like Elendil and Isildur, and then we've got the Kingsmen, who are the ones who will eventually turn to worship Melkor via Sauron. And at that time, around that time, they turn away. They kind of turn their backs on the elves, and so maybe this is giving us a clue that, you know, these races are divided at this point, and we're kind of coming in on the front end of that.
You know, Leia Peterson in the chat room has a real simple solution for this bullet point, and I can't believe we didn't think of this, Cliff. Their men, elves, and dwarfs have their own production units because those are simple COVID bubble rules. Small unit. Small
right. Right.
Like, that makes total sense. You know what? That makes more sense than anything. Rather than trying to connect this and getting too superfluous. Look, they filmed this at the height of COVID.
Yeah.
And they filmed throughout COVID. So there's little bubble units of production. Of course they won't see each other. And you know what? I'll bet you they have their own makeup trailers and you know what? I'm blaming all that on COVID. Perfect. Sold. Leia in the chat room, or Leah? Sold in the chat room. Hey, next bullet point. Fans of Game of Thrones will recognize this. There's a fake production team shooting decoy footage on fake sex unrelated to real production, thus making some reports of location sightings from some rumor channels and stuff on social might be false leads. Now, Cliff, this is standard operating procedure. We saw this on Game of Thrones. We've seen this on DC movies and Marvel movies. This is just normal Hollywood stuff, right?
No surprise here, although to a lot of people it seems like news, but it's the regular thing that they do in the Marvel films and in DC. Large scale intellectual property projects have a regular habit, when it's necessary, of using decoy, you know, tertiary set, little people running around pretending to have a costume on, and none of it is related to what they're really filming.
Well,
so this is a thing.
I didn't realize that Marvel and DC did this as well. I do kind of wonder if DC maybe should have like concentrated less on decoy footage and maybe their actual.
Well, Game of Thrones is the king of television decoy sets. I mean, they made it an art form. And if you weren't involved, if you weren't in the fandom of Game of Thrones during those last 2 seasons, boy, you saved yourself a lot of drama. You know what? I agree with Jason Charles Miller. If you're hiring fake actors and fake sets, I'm right here. So is Jason Charles Miller. In fact, I think Jason looks Middle Earth. Like just hire him. People will think he's in the show. If you need decoys, I'm vaccinated. Send me down. Moving on. Cliff, this is just a confirmation of stuff we've been reporting. We just thought we'd throw it into this report that main unit wrapped in April 2021. Most of the actors are back in the UK. You can see that on social media. There's a bunch of actors that have been in New Zealand for the last year and a half. They're posting from the pub, watching the football games and all that stuff. We just know that things wrapped in April 2021 because that's when Dana wrapped her stunt work on Lord of the Rings, and she is expected to be Galadriel's stunt double, which is the main unit. Galadriel is the main character. And the other big thing, J.A. Bayona's episodes are a standalone entry point, like a feature film. Can you talk a little bit more about that clip?
2 hours, 2 hours in, and I'm just what I've heard is that it was structured as a piece of narrative to be more like a really effective standalone piece. And I kind of see the wisdom in that. Maybe at the end, they might want to theatrically release it before they launch it on Amazon Prime. You never know. You never know.
Matt, what do you think of the idea of like the pilot just being kind of standalone story?
Yeah, it's an interesting method. I mean, we've seen it before, not often. The most obvious example I think of is Clone Wars.
I was just going to say that. Clone Wars, yeah. And that was theatrically released.
Yeah, which wasn't very good, to be fair, the film, but the show ended up being great, fantastic. So it had a good rebound. But yeah, I could see. I mean, gosh, you think of, it kind of is taking big blockbuster films to get people in theaters right now. And I can't think of anything bigger than a new Lord of the Rings film, for lack of a better term. Those first 2 episodes essentially making a film would definitely bring people into the theater.
100%. 100%. The next bullet point here, there are more incredible directors and stars yet to be announced. I've been talking about this for over a year now. I think that there's some to be announced with the Blue Wizards, possibly Russell Crowe, and more directors that we might know their names, similar to what Star Wars The Mandalorian is doing, where they have these huge name directors directing episodes of The Mandalorian and the Boba Fett series. So I expect Amazon is doing that. We've already hinted at this, and I believe Fellowship of Fams was the one to break this news that Wheel of Time directors are working on Lord of the Rings and vice versa. So if you were on Twitter yesterday, you saw that Wheel of Time announced that season 2 is in production as of yesterday. Well, Lord of the Rings wrapped in April. That means they're sharing. The timing works out perfect. So they shot season 1 of Wheel of Time. They wrapped that. Some of the directors moved on to Lord of the Rings. They wrapped that in April. Now Wheel of Time season 2 starts. They're going to film that. And when they're done with Wheel of Time season 2, allegedly, the filming for season 2 of Lord of the Rings. So they're just, it's kind of the Marvel system of just getting it done. Which you can't fault Marvel for putting together a production system. And of course, I think, Cliff, this might be known, and we'll go more into this on our Comic-Con panel this weekend. But the show is not coming out this year, and it's going to come out next year, probably in the spring, and playing 8 episodes through the summer. Now, here's the juiciest part of the spy report. Boy, oh boy.
There's many spy reports that we've gotten that are amalgamated here today. Most of which you got, Justin, actually.
Well, yeah. So the first bullet point in the spy report is the halflings, or some halflings, we don't know how many there are going to be, are the dark skin precursors, quite possibly different breeds, as Tolkien described, Harfoots.
And those 3, as Matt would know, are the Fallowhides and the Stoors, who obviously the most famous branch of the Stoors, and also the Harfoots. Yes.
So was this surprising to you, Matt, to hear?
I honestly didn't expect hobbits to pop up in this show. They kind of enter history around 1,000 years into the Third Age. But it is a very mysterious origin. You know, we don't really 100% know where they came from. They just kind of show up in history. Yeah, so I'm interested to see what they do with that. I'm hoping.
You know, I think Tolkien gave himself a little bit of a pass because in the Concerning Hobbits prologue, he said, "Oh, they never kept their own records.
Right.
They weren't really interested in writing down their own records." And so the good professor maybe gave himself a little bit of an out.
Well, you're right. I did some deep diving into this, and so from Fellowship of the Ring, the chapter concerning hobbits, which, look, you can fact check this by bringing up your own copy. I'll quote Tolkien straight from the text, okay? From Concerning Hobbits. "Yet it is clear that hobbits had in fact lived quietly in Middle-earth for many long years before other folk even became aware of them." So Cliff, that paragraph solves the whole hobbits weren't in the Second Age. Like that single paragraph single-handedly says, you know what? Just because you haven't read about it before doesn't mean they didn't exist.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah, kind of leaves the door open a little bit. You know, there's some wiggle room, I guess, there.
So we're going to say that the timeline, we're going to allow Amazon that halflings are in the Second Age, and it's true to Tolkien. We're going to allow that.
You know what? This is a counterpoint to me screaming into the void for months and months and months, saying there are no hobbits in the Second Age. I've always said that. Everybody watching this live stream has heard me say that all the time. So, you know, great.
Now,
here we
to
are.
be fair, you are talking like 1,000 years. You know, it says many long years. I don't know. You know, that's you know, obviously a very vague term, but we are talking a difference of at least 1,000 years, probably multiple thousands of years. So it is a bit of a stretch on Amazon's part to include hobbits. I will say that.
It is a stretch, but it's not out. It's not totally untrue to Tolkien. There is an allowance for early hobbits. And to be clear, everything that we've heard, the show does not call these people hobbits. We don't know what they're called, but they're halflings, they're proto-hobbits, they could be Harfoots or Fallowhides. My money's on Harfoots, and I'll show you why right now. The next paragraph. This is straight from Tolkien's hand. "The Harfoots were browner of skin, smaller and shorter, and they were beardless and bootless. Their hands and feet were neat and nimble, and they preferred highlands and hillsides." So Tolkien specifically said the Harfoots are browner of skin. This is huge to where we're going. Let's go to the next one. The Harfoots had much to do with dwarves in ancient times. Well, there's your timeline. If you want ancient times, there you go. Second Age, ancient times. The Harfoots had much to do with dwarves in ancient times and long lived in the foothills of the mountains. They moved westward early.
Now that sentence is key that I noticed, that Tolkien says they moved westward early and were roaming around, as he says right here, as far as Weathertop, while the others were still in Wilderland. So that says something to me about the people in the writer's room were thinking, how can we create a TV series in Middle-earth without any halflings at all? Is there any possible way that we could do this? And they must have gone to the Tolkien estate, because this, you know, somebody in the chat just said, you know what, this is not as heinous. It's not the most heinous infidelity. And I'm like, yeah, I really, really appreciate that, Rory, in the chat. It is a bit of a stretch, but they're looking at the language in the appropriate way to see that they could stretch it without it being incredulous. And if the estate approved it, then they did.
Tolkien's final words on Harfoots: they were the most normal and representative variety of hobbit, and by far the most numerous. They were the most inclined to settle in one place and longest preserved in their ancestral habit of living in tunnels and holes. The cliffs. So they're basically saying Tolkien, by his own hand, said they were browner of skin than hobbits that we know, and they were the most numerous, and they are the oldest, and they are the most normal variety of hobbit. I mean, this does any of this surprise you, Matt?
No, not particular. I mean, I've read this at some point or another, obviously, but yeah, I think, what they're saying that they're the most normal. I think, when you think of hobbits, you think of them living in holes and tunnels, and it said earlier that they were bootless, didn't wear shoes, so they kind of do all the quintessential hobbit things that later in the Third Age that we would come to know them as. And I think, as I think through this, I don't think this will mean that necessarily hobbits will be a huge player in the show. It might be a little bit of that. They wanted some familiarity. If this ends up being true, I can't imagine, turning the hobbits into the heroes yet again of a story. We've already had 2 whole trilogies. Tolkien's
I agree.
2 most famous stories are Hobbit centric. So I think if anything, this might be a chance for the other, races in Middle Earth to help out the hobbits
to shine. Ryan Hamilton in the chat room says, so sounds like you just described Kevin Hart. Is he playing a Harfoot? No, I don't think. Well, not this season, at least. Princess Toynard says, what do we call hobbits if they were not called hobbits? Well, let's bring it up on screen. Tolkien calls them Harfoots. The Harfoots had much to do with the dwarves in ancient times. They were the most normal and representative of the variety of hobbit. And so the next bullet point on this big Amazon leak is that the first Harfoot that it looks like we're going to see is Sir Lenny Henry, one of the biggest names in comedy in the world. Cliff, can you explain just how significant Lenny Henry is? By the way, this is a Photoshop we just mocked up yesterday. Of course, that's Bilbo.
This isn't an official portrait.
This is
release?
Not official.
Okay.
That is Bilbo's dress and sword, and that's Sting. This is from Desolation of Smaug. All I did was put Sir Lenny Henry's head on Bilbo's body. So this is this is just a quick Photoshop pic. By the way, this is not how Lenny Henry looked on set. On set, he did not have a beard, and his hair is grown out a little bit more. We've seen pictures. If you go back to Lenny Henry's Twitter and you go back to his posts like around Christmas time, you can see that he's got a little more hair and less of a beard. So, Cliff, I mean, Lenny Henry was already one of our most exciting cast members. Confirming that he is a Harfoot, a halfling. How excited does this improve your excitement for the show?
Yeah, it does a great deal, because Lenny Henry is a brilliant talent, and for many months you had been talking about him playing a Lord of the Dwarves, perhaps, because the rumors we had a long time ago was that he was playing a short character, right?
That's right. I heard he was a short character, which I thought, okay, cool. He's going to be one of the kings of the dwarves. He might even build Moria. This is more exciting.
Well, there's a chance here for unwanted controversy, like there is at any given point in time. But to be much more honest, this might be one of the best chances for the writers to try to bring halflings into the story. Like Matt said just a little while ago, they're well over 1,000 years out of this timeline, at least by looking at the appendix. And
But Tolkien already just said that they've been longer than records have been kept.
I know that they did not even keep their own records. So there might be a lot of real inaccuracies in the Red Book. I mean, even though we're going with exactly what Tolkien wrote at any given time, we know that Professor Tolkien's conceit, the main conceit of the Red Book, and how it was written by Bilbo and then Frodo and then Sam and carried on, right, Matt? So,
yes,
it is always a little funny. It's funny to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I will also bring up, I was doing some Googling here and found that their halflings were first recorded. This is courtesy of Tolkien Gateway, by the way. Halflings were first recorded in Arnorian records around 1050 of the Third Age.
Yeah, but they were friends with the elves before the men kept records. The elves have longer records, and the dwarves have even longer records. So, basing the Harfoots timeline on men's records is misnomer. Hey, I want to open the hotline.
I'm just conveying information here.
I'm just giving you the information from another website. Hey, let's open the hotline. I'll take the next caller. I want to hear only about your Harfoot opinions. I want to hear your Harfoot opinions. The phone number is on the screen right now, 530-643-7636. Give me a call right now because I want to know what the fans think about Harfoots being in the show. It sounds like it's not a big role, right? We know Lenny Henry was only there for a few months. Okay, we know that Lenny Henry flew in. Oh, here we go. Torn hotline. Hi, who's calling?
Hi, it's Arna. I just want to say, I think Lenny Henry looks awesome for a dwarf, but I want to know what roles he's played that Clifford is admired in, so I could look it up. For one.
Okay. Do you like the idea of Harfoots being a character in this new show?
I like it a lot. Yes, I do. Thank you. And I'm excited about Lenny Henry playing possibly a dwarf. The question is, does he have to deal with dwarf makeup like John Rhys Davies, or is he as lucky as the sexy dwarf Keely?
That's a good question. Well, let's throw it to Cliff. Arne, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
So, Cliff, I know that he started the Red Nose Comedy Charity in the UK, and I know Lenny Henry started that comedy charity comedy thing that Robin Williams made famous in the 80s, right?
In the comic relief charity effort. That is correct. Yes, he did.
So
I've seen some really good British television shows that Lenny Henry has been in. Most of the Harry Potter fans out there would not know this unless they really double checked. But in The Prisoner of Azkaban, Lenny Henry is the voice of the shrunken talking head that's hanging up in the night bus.
I did not know that.
Yes, he is the voice of that outrageous talking shrunken head that is cracking all the jokes in Prisoner of Azkaban on the night bus. He's done there's a TV series that he was in the 90s that I watched a lot called Chef. When I was watching all that Chef, there was a TV series in the 90s, in the late 90s, and I know I'm dating myself because I'm older than anybody here, and that's fine. Okay.
Julia in the chat room says Chef is her favorite BBC show.
It's so good, so very good. And I tell you what, the man is responsible for such humanitarian efforts. To see him bring his stage talent and his comedy talent into Middle Earth, it might be just the breath of fresh air that the series needs. if
That's
the
what I was
series
going
is
to get
if
at.
it's super
Oh, we got
serious,
another.
maybe he's the breath of fresh air that it needs.
Oh, call back. I just missed you. Call back.
Okay.
If,
All right.
if someone
Call
else, call back. I want to hear fan feedback on Harfoots and Lenny Henry joining. And Cliff, can we take a guess now that if Lenny Henry is the leader of the Harfoots,
Mm-hmm.
can we extrapolate from that and maybe assign most of or people of the cast that have generated a lot of dialogue online? Can we assign them as hobbits or Harfoots at this point?
No, your supposition that he might be a leader, we don't know what type of character he's playing, but the fact that he's not going to be a dwarf. If this rumor pans out, and he's not going to be a dwarf lord, and he will be one of the Harfoots, I think it's really cool. I think it's brilliant in a way, because it's nice to shake things up a bit. People in the live chat have often fallen back. There's always that cynical voice where you're thinking, whatever the writers are doing, they're playing fast and loose with Tolkien just for the efforts of fan service to stick hobbits into the series. And I don't know, maybe not. Maybe both things can equally be true.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
the writers' room are trying to find, elasticity, for lack of a better word, in what they're allowed to do with the Tolkien estate, granting them certain permissions to do things. And maybe that elasticity allows them to bring in, for lack of a better term, necessary comic relief. I mean, if the whole TV series is going to be Sturm and Drang and all this gloom and doom, they're gonna need some other story elements to lighten things up. And they want to attract the worldwide audience of Middle-earth fans. So maybe I can see the logic behind them looking at Tolkien's language and realizing, oh, the Harfoots wandered around way earlier than anybody else did. So they're going to give themselves that 1,500-year stretch, right, Matt?
It might not even be, we might be giving this Harfoots thing a disproportionate, compared to the other races and storylines. Obviously, it's an exciting piece, so we're talking about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Harfoots show up. Maybe we see them for a couple episodes and that's it. But it's something like Cliff said. It can be a little bit of fan service and a little bit of, playing loose with Tolkien, that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily a death knell that they would seek to put something familiar in this show like halflings.
We've got a couple texts.
There's definitely value there.
We're getting text messages. I appreciate. Thank you for the calls. Thank you for text messages. Let me read a couple of them real quick. All right. Let's see. We got a text message that says, I think this is an easy way for Amazon to introduce people of color. Nobody can argue that Tolkien specifically named different skin colors of the hobbits. Thank you very much. We got another one. CJ here from Florida. I think the Harfoots having much to do with the dwarves can also set up some cool dialogue between the two races at Khazad-dûm, such as trade, because the dwarves did not grow their own food. I think the inclusion of Harfoots is brilliant.
You know what? That does make sense. That if the dwarves were operating with typical isolationist policies, then they would, by any matter of fact, like they did when they lived in Erebor, they would have to trade with others and other communities nearby to get, goods, food, produce, and perishables. Of course, I get that.
Of course, and I'll let Nerd of the Rings reply to this one. Rory from Canada tweets us on the hotline. Again, the phone number's at the bottom of the screen. Rory from Canada says, having Hobbit precursor clans is unsubtle fan service and a stretch outside the source material canon, but it's honestly fine by me. The tying to precursor clans shows some attempt at staying within some kind of boundaries.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it can be fan service. It can be, an attempt to bring people in by showing them what's familiar. I'm not, it doesn't worry me at all as, as a fan looking at this. I would be much more concerned if it was, okay, here's the hobbits front and center on the poster. And then you've got like Gilgalad and Celebrimbor are like minor characters in this story. Those are, or Elrond or Galadriel, all these people that we know factor heavily into the Second Age. If they were taking a back seat to hobbits, that would be a huge red flag that, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. I think this is, it's kind of a both and. Like, you can bring in something that's familiar, and
nope, we're going to call on the hotline. I'm going to interrupt right now.
That's all right.
Hi, who's calling?
This is Rebecca. Am I still in time to share my opinions about hobbits being on the new show?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
All right. Hi. It's really cool to get to talk to you. Sorry. But I think at first I thought it wasn't really a good idea because I didn't think hobbits would fit into the Second Age. I was agreeing with Cliff that they didn't really belong in it. But after you guys went and looked through the appendices and explained it and looked at the timelines a little more, I think it's going to be a really good way to provide comedic relief in the show because it's supposed to be darker than like The Hobbit was.
It's true to Tolkien. I mean, if you go to the text, you can find passages that really expand our knowledge of halflings. And I was surprised to learn that as well. And it sounds like you were too.
Yeah, I was, because at first I didn't really read through the appendices that much. I was mostly just reading Lord of the Rings a bunch. And so I thought hobbits don't really fit in the Second Age. I thought that was just Third Age stuff, but now it makes a lot more sense.
Are you familiar with Lenny Henry at all, or is he a new face to you?
He's a new actor to me. I only know him from watching Tomorrow Tuesday. It's the first time I've heard of him.
Boy, you are going to be in for a treat, and I can't wait for you to discover Lenny Henry. Hey, thanks for calling.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Cliff, it sounds like, again, going back to the text, and you know what, Matt, you brought up like we're probably giving too much time to probably a very small cameo. Again, Lenny Henry was only on set for two or 3 months, but again,
which could still be, multiple episodes for sure. Yeah.
It could be multiple episodes, and they could play a critical part at a critical juncture in the storyline. But one of the reasons we're spending so much time having Lenny talking about this is because, like it or not, the discourse, the online discussion has been kind of toxic on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. We've seen articles in the Federalist, and we've seen articles in the Washington Examiner and some of the right-wing places criticizing the casting of Lord of the Rings, Amazon Lord of the Rings. And here we are.
I would gently offer that the only quote unquote negativity is coming from just that quadrant.
That quadrant. Well,
yeah.
I mean, but look, we're deleting a ton of comments constantly every time we post a picture of the cast, the group cast, because there's a subset of fandom that just laser focuses on what people look like, and doesn't even address the quality of their character or their acting skills. So I wanted to spend some time today going direct to Tolkien's hand, and without a shadow of a doubt, placing Lenny Henry as a halfling is true to Tolkien. As a
proto halfling, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we're spending a lot of time with this. And I think the phone call that we just had really is inspiring, and that's why we do these live shows. I love hearing from you in the chat room. Keep texting us. I love seeing your comments in the chat. But this is what we're here for. We want to give context to what's going on, because Amazon's not going to tell you anything. So You know, it's true to Tolkien. Anyway, that's it. Let's move on because the next thing is probably the biggest, biggest thing. Oh boy, let's go next. Celebrimbor, the Ringmaker, has been recast, and Tom Budge was in that role. Okay. You know that it happens. We don't know why he was recast. You know, we don't know what they're doing with the character. Maybe they've lessened the Ringmaker. Maybe they're expanding it. Who knows?
Maybe there was some other project that, you know,
scheduling conflicts. Maybe this was maybe COVID affected everybody in a different way.
We have no earthly idea why or how any of this happened. We really don't.
It could have been as simply as the dude got homesick and he was stuck in New Zealand during COVID. We don't know his family situation or anything like that. So who knows? Who knows? But we know this is the first official confirmation the Ringmaker Celebrimbor is in season 1. This is huge. Huge. Okay, next one. Let's go. Whew. Certain creatures are referred to as ice trolls because they can't be called caved trolls because of Warner Brothers licensing. Cliff, you're Mr. Hollywood. You've produced Ringers, Lord of the Fans. You've worked on several movies. What does this mean?
If I had the legal documents in front of me that explained why New Line Cinema can make an anime film and Amazon Studios cannot, then I would be better equipped to answer your question. Honestly, well, this is where we get into the really weird, tangled thicket of licensing and issuance of rights, and I can't even get my head around it. I mean, but yeah, you go on with yourself and making up new trolls and new types of monsters and creatures. You go ahead, Amazon. Go ahead, make them up. You go for it.
And if I recall correctly, one of the first leaks from the Lord of the Rings set was thanks to Fellowship of Fans. Again, the biggest scoops of this show has been through Fellowship of Fans. Give him a follow on YouTube.
Absolutely.
He had that footage of that big ice mountain set, remember? So it is not too far-fetched we've seen a set of a giant ice mountain that was 4 stories tall. And now to hear that we have ice trolls, I mean, I'm calling this 100% lock. Ice trolls. I hope they don't look like the ride at Disneyland.
Oh, you mean the Matterhorn?
The Matterhorn.
Stop it.
Yeah, so
Stop it.
I saw someone asked in the chat, why not just call them trolls instead of ice troll? That's a good point. Why not just default to trolls?
Because in Lord of the Rings, everything had a name. They always called like remember the trolls that opened the Black Gate? They weren't called trolls. They were called beasts of burden.
It's funny because in the Helm Hammerhand story, they describe him moving like a snow troll, I believe. So like this, it's kind of odd that there's actually a term for a, you know, I guess cold weather troll, but they went with ice troll instead of snow troll.
Maybe. You know, I honestly, I would love a line from an actor that says they have an ice troll. I'm okay with this. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. We continue. We're still going through this.
We're gonna have to do an over under sometime on how many Lord of the Rings movie references like that end up in this show, where they kind of sort of tweak a meme or something from Lord of the Rings.
Cliff, boy, this is a big one. Nudity.
It is
sparse and not sexualized, contrary to earlier concerns. But rather, this artistic choice represents very dark thematic material, suggestive of concentration camp type visuals of victims, a harrowing portrayal of the corruption of the elves by the dark powers to ultimately create orcs. And Cliff, you point out in this article this may well be one of the most ambitious undertakings by the show. What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I've got egg on my face because it is my responsibility, actually, to correct the record. And today is another good day for me to say I'm sorry again and to take responsibility. So to the entire Tolkien fan community, I am so glad to say that I was wrong. I'm very, very wrong. And that article I wrote last October was probably, just me wanting to have a conversation so that we could prepare ourselves for something inevitable, but it's not inevitable. It turns out that this is
the thing about being a fan right now.
It's completely different.
We get pieces of information. We don't have the whole story. Mm-hmm. We won't until the show comes out. And so the fun of being a fan right now is to hear these slivers of information, extrapolate what this could mean in the Tolkien, and based on the information we had at the time, this seemed like the most likely path. And Cliff, to your credit, you kind of called this out 6 months ago in your article, but I do love that your article inspired so many jokes on Stephen Colbert's Late Show that even last week when Billy and Dom were on the show, he had another nudity joke.
He did. Well, you know what?
And for the record, Stephen Colbert supports nudity in Tolkien's world.
And that's fine. And that's fine too. But the real news, besides the fact that I've got egg on my face and I'm not going to pretend that that I'm never wrong. I will never pretend that I mean, come on. This is intriguing because what they're talking about capturing elves and elves being systematically and carefully tortured, like it was something that Morgoth was doing a long time before the events of the Second Age. So it doesn't seem to make sense in the timeline, but it is ambitious in the sense that we're going to not think about orcs the way we have always thought about orcs. They were always irredeemable. They were always, and this is something that Tolkien was criticized for, even when he was alive, that his orcs are one-dimensional villains. But now they're not going to be one-dimensional villains. We're going to look at them and consider them as individuals before they were turned evil. If this is true, if this rumor is true, then great. Okay, wow. It sends. If I were in the writer's room, I would never want to tackle this subject. It's not something I would think of. It's really not something I would consider. So it's really fascinating. And it is ambitious, but if the nudity is not ever going to be sexualized, that is the main relief. That is such a relief to me. I can handle a crazy, difficult Schindler's List type of ghoulish horror. I can handle all kinds of dark things and dark themes in a story. But I did have a major objection to unnecessarily sexualizing anything in Middle-earth because it was the last thing in the world that Professor Tolkien would have done. But
Cliff, we got a couple comments from the chat room before I want to get Matt's opinion on this nudity stuff. First off, Sarah in the chat room says, Cliff, you do not have egg on your face. You made many good points, and you had to say something in light of all the rumors that were going around. And Cliff, we have a friend of the show, Tiffany Broadway, says, nude Lee Pace, please.
Okay. Somebody needs to talk to my sister after the show, and I think maybe I'll do that. maybe I'll have a private talk with my sister after the show. Well, hi, Tiffany. That's funny. Okay.
Cliff, you and I disagreed when we first heard about this rumor last week, and we really had to dive into our connections to kind of validate this because
you heard about this, Justin. You heard about this.
Right, the royal we. So, so let me give my perspective on naked elves, and then Matt, you can be the tiebreaker.
Okay.
Cliff, you said that you don't want sexual elves. You don't want sexual nudity, but you're okay. Yeah, but this is more accommodating. I am the reverse. I think Tolkien specifically said he wanted to avoid the vulgar, and I think you and I have a difference of opinion on what vulgar means, because, and I think this is a very American perspective, thinking that nudity and sex is vulgar, and concentration camps are not vulgar. Concentration camps, to me, are more vulgar than any romantic interlude.
Dictionary.com, vulgar, adjective. Definition number 1, characterized by ignorance of or a lack of good taste or good breeding. Number 2, indecent, obscene, lewd. And that's what I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Professor Tolkien was talking about definition number 2.
Again, let's go to the thing. Nudity is not sexualized. It is material suggestive of concentration camp type visuals. Again, this is more disgusting, more vulgar, and more antithetical to what Tolkien wrote about in his show. We're not saying people didn't have sex in Tolkien's Middle-earth. Absolutely they did, but he never showed it. I'm going to have to go back to the text, because if he does describe the corruption of the elves in some detail, then I will stand corrected. But I feel like, dude, concentration camps. There was a question at the top of the show in the chat room. Will Amazon's TV show carry on the family-friendly tradition of Peter Jackson's movies? And this description of group elvish nudity in the corruption of their persons into orcs is so not family friendly. I don't. My family does not sit around at Thanksgiving watching Schindler's List. I'm not interested in this.
You're gonna watch a show about Numenor where they're marching people up to the top of Menel Tarma, and Sauron has a Morgoth bloody altar set up there so that Sauron can get victims sacrificed to Morgoth, and you're going to tell me that type of apocalypto stuff,
well,
is
the
okay?
The violence conversation is complete. The violence conversation is completely different. Okay,
we need to bring Matt in.
Laser focus on nudity, and I'm saying Tolkien was adverse to portraying the vulgar. And as much as you don't want sex happening, even if it's tastefully shot.
In the chat, Robert Hill says, Church of Melkor, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Well, yeah, violence is a whole different thing. But I'm saying the corruption of elves and the fact that they have an on-set nudity advisor, and they had an open casting call for elvish type people, thin, high cheekbone people that are comfortable with nudity. This was an open casting call. That casting call is what kicked off the whole nudity conversation, right? The open casting call.
Yes, that's fair.
So
that's fair.
Basically, if you combine the casting calls with the hiring of an intimacy coordinator and a nudity consultant, and the fact that we're going to have tens or hundreds of nude elf-looking people being corrupted in concentration camp-type visuals, boy, oh boy, that is more vulgar to me than a tasteful sexual thing. I want to hear your guys' opinion text us your opinion on what you think about nudity and concentration camp elves. I
flatly disagree with your counterpoint.
You already stated
Justin,
your opinion. I'm stating mine, and we're throwing it to Matt.
And again, I'm asking to bring Matt back, please. Thank you.
Okay. I've just been enjoying this dialogue so I could weigh in on my thoughts here, because I do have several thoughts on this. So I will gladly break this tie. I am 100% with Cliff on this. I think that sexual nudity it has no place in Tolkien's works. It is never something you'll find. And with the corruption of the elves and the concentration camp type visuals that you're talking about here, that would fit more with Tolkien than sexual nudity, because every time that there's nudity, it's from a place of vulnerability. Like you think of Numenor after she's lost her memory, you know, she's crazed like a wild beast. You think of you know, again in Children of Hurin, you've got the elf that taunts Turin and he strips him naked and makes him run because he made a comment about, you know, the women of Dorlomin running naked like deer. And it talks about the fear that he feels in that moment. And so those emotions, fear and vulnerability, match much better with the tone of Tolkien in those rare occasions. And that being said, as a fan, as a parent of young boys, I have my oldest two are 9 and 10, and they absolutely love the Lord of the Rings movies. They you know, have started reading through the books. I would love to be able to enjoy this show with them. So that very much shapes my personal opinions on it. So I'm hoping for my sake, for their sake, being able to enjoy this show with me, that, you know, this is less of a, you know, less of a big thing. And maybe it's just like a brief, you know, clip in a montage explaining how orcs are made. And maybe, you know, the nudity can be, there's such a broad spectrum that can cover, obviously, you know, we can, obviously Game of Thrones is on one extreme, and then, you know, it could just be someone's backside that you see for, you know, half a second in a big group setting, and you just convey vulnerability that way. I might tend to argue, you know, you could have them in rags or something and they could still be vulnerable. But either way, I think you know, it all depends on how they execute it, you know. And what I think there's a lot of people in the same position where you know, they grew up with the films and now they have kids that they're introducing to the films. And you know, the idea that there's a new show coming out that they could potentially share with their kids for the first time, that's a pretty powerful thing. And I think, you know, if and I think I said it last time we were on here, I think it would be a potential miscalculation on Amazon's part to you know, cut out that potential young audience from these films that Lord of the Rings had and continues to have.
Excellent points. Very, very good points.
You have made some fans in the chat room. Everybody in the chat room is agreeing with you in some capacity, Matt. If you like what he says, give him a follow on YouTube. Nerd of the Rings are the #1 Tolkien YouTube channel.
I'm still second to Men of the West as far as subscriber count at the moment. So
we'll get you there if you keep talking like that. So you guys have been texting your opinions. I love to hear your opinions on this concentration camp type visuals and the corruption of the elves and nudity. The phone number's at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to read a couple that we've gotten so far. Sauron using sex to manipulate makes sense. Yes, that's what I signed up for. This idea of nudity in a concentration camp is less appealing to me than Sauron, the deceiver, taking many forms and using sex to further his. Remember, he's got 19 rings to give away. I have to imagine a few of those rings are given in a romantic capacity.
I think
Justin, you let your mind wander too far, man.
Yeah. I think Sauron, I feel like he's one of those people it's not even, you know, a thing for him. Like, he's not interested in that. He's interested in controlling everything and everyone. And it's, you know, when Tolkien talks about him,
can be for some people.
But it's Yeah, I don't think that's, I know the quote a lot of times people use of Tolkien's is that seduce, which in Tolkien's language in that day was not a sexual seduction. It is a seduction of power, and
or metaphysical seduction.
Yes, absolutely.
Simon in the chat room accurately quotes Tolkien, says high and purged of the gross. That is from the pen of Tolkien himself. High and purged of the gross.
I want to give a big shout out.
Should make Justin get that tattooed on him so he remembers it.
Yeah, written in the tone that is high, purged of the gross. Let's do that. A big shout out to Nancy. Hello, Nancy Steinman, who's in the live chat with us. She's an extraordinary illustrator, graphic designer, and she created the opening graphics and the titles for our documentary, Ringer's Lord of the Fans. And she says, rather appropriately, that the elves had to have sex. Just because Tolkien didn't write about it doesn't make it bad to portray it as a natural thing. And there's a lot to be discovered in the peoples of Middle-earth, and obviously in the other posthumously published volumes of the History of Middle-earth series, where you can learn about the customs and the ways of the Eldar, right? Remember that? And you can read extraordinary, detailed, and rather academic discussion about the way that elves find each other and share passion through matrimony and intimacy and spirit to have a very different kind of coupling. And I'd like to use that term. Elves do not even come close to other men or dwarves or any other people anywhere the way that they couple spiritually and physically and emotionally. So that is something worth exploring, and it can be explored tastefully because Professor Tolkien did in his posthumous works. So I'm with that. I'm totally with that as well.
It doesn't mean I don't want to see Galadriel date. I want to see Galadriel dating in this show over 5 seasons.
I do not want to see Galadriel dating anybody but Celeborn. What are you talking about?
Well, okay, so we just...
Is this the Bachelorette or something?
It's not. Yeah, it's...
So, Matt, since you have young children...
Yes.
We just got a text message in saying Amazon just needs to add a skip nudity button to their player.
That would be pretty legit. Yeah.
A skip nudity button?
I mean, I'm hoping that if there's enough nudity in this show that they have to add a skip nudity button, there might be more problems than just a single concentration camp scene.
If you guys go and watch the full interview Stephen Colbert did with Billy and Don last week on The Late Show, they talk about nudity more than expected, and I can't believe it's still in the discussion now. But Colbert has single-handedly convinced me that I actually kind of want to see the halflings get naked and run around in the grass. That's the only nudity I'd be okay with at this point. Just happy, fun little barefoot, bare bottom Harfoots running around the Highlands.
That was, I mean, going back to Matt's comment about vulnerability and nakedness or being stripped to show a character's extreme emotional, psychological vulnerability as well. But the other gentle counterpoint of that is the liberation. The liberation of Bombadil telling the hobbits, you are no longer under the shadow of the Barrow Wight. This is a chance for you to breathe the sunshine. Literally, I meant what I said. Breathe in the sunshine and smell the air, just, you know what I'm saying. But that's because the raiment that they had been wearing underground in the Barrow was evil and perhaps cursed.
We got a text message from Leia before we move on the subject of elvish nudity and concentration camp. Says, hi, it's Leia from Virginia. I think ultimately we're going to have a vast array of opinions on this. Tolkien's work means different things to different people. We have to remember that all of us are coming into this with different religious beliefs and opinions about sex, violence, etc. The most important thing is that the Tolkien estate is involved in the show, and I think that bodes well for all of us. I think we ultimately want fidelity to Tolkien, whatever that looks like, and I'm optimistic we're getting that. Cliff, you started the fidelity to Tolkien. So far, everything that we've talked about in this show seems more and more fidel.
It does, fidelity, but you know what? Funny, more fidel. You're hilarious. Honestly, guys, we are at the mercy of the people at the Tolkien estate, who now that Christopher is gone, we're at the mercy of hoping that the only bulwark against egregious changes to the story is them and their veto power.
Yes, this is true. We got 2 more bullet points. If you guys can believe this huge Lord of the Rings scoop, this is the most we've ever known about the show. Let's go to the tape. The next big point: elves will have short hairstyles. Elves will have short hair. Matt, what was your initial gut reaction hearing this?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's certainly a way for them to mix things up a bit. It's kind of a bold move because, you know, all the elves we've seen so far have kind of had that trademark long hair.
Except for the Ralph Bakshi film.
Right. Yes. I'm speaking more from Peter Jackson, you know, the more recent, more widely circulated, I guess. But
isn't that the Alan Lee influence? The John Howe influence?
I guess it would be. Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, there's certainly you know, we had a discussion among my Patreon Discord today about this, and there's only a handful of elves that are specified to have long hair. I believe Glorfindel is one. I want to say maybe Elrond. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, if it looks cool,
we went
then...
to the tape. Again, we went back to Tolkien's books.
Yeah.
If anything, the best way to shut down any internet discourse is just go to Tolkien himself. What did he say about short hair? Here is J.R.R. Tolkien from his 1960 publication, The War of the Jewels and the History of Middle-earth. On the origin of this name, see note 11. From Tolkien's hand, the lore masters also supposed that reference was made to the hair of the Sindar. Elwë himself had indeed long and beautiful hair of silver hue, but this does not seem to have been a common feature of the Sindar. There you go. There it is. This long hair.
Now, is it referring to the length or the hue there, I guess?
Well, you know, that's the beauty of Tolkien's writing, is he leaves it up to the imagination.
Right. Continuing
on with J.R.R. Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien, though it was found among them occasionally, especially in the nearer or remoter kin of Elwë, as in the case of Círdan.
It's pronounced Círdan.
Círdan. All right. In general, the Sindar appeared to have very closely resembled the exiles, being dark-haired, strong and tall, but lithe. Indeed, they could hardly be told apart except by their eyes, for the eyes of all the elves that had dwelt in Aman impressed those of Middle-earth by their piercing brightness. This is in the chapters Quendi, as stated in Quendi, and Eldar in the book, and J.R.R. Tolkien's book, The War of the Jewels. So, by Tolkien's own hand and his own words, we can imply that long hair and or silver hair does not seem to have been a common feature of the Sindar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Indeed. How about that? Yes.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I don't have strong feelings about the hair, to be honest. I'm kind of like,
you know what? I do.
If they look cool, then awesome.
I do want to point out that for a very long time, a lot of the fans, especially the very popular LOTR fan artists on Twitter, that whole Twitter community of illustrators and artists they've been talking for a long, long time before this rumor hit us about elves having short hair. Okay, it was done in 1978. You will never see Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, with shorter hair than you will in the 1978 Ralph Bakshi film, as well as, take a look at Legolas's hair, who was voiced by C-3PO, Anthony Daniels. Yes.
Cliff, Diego in the chat room wants to know, are we sure that this info is 100% real or meant to confuse the fans?
Was this from one of those fake shoots? Is that what this is?
So my opinion is I'm gonna put short hair at 95% accurate. I'm not gonna go full 100%, but I think I've been hearing this and I've been telling you guys this for over 6 months. I really do think the elves have short hair. Cliff,
maybe
what's
we'll
your
get a
vibe
mohawk on one of them.
Ooh, didn't Orlando Bloom have a mohawk at the?
Yeah, I loved Orlando's mohawk. That was great. Yeah. Hey, I'm down. I'm down for elves with any kind of hairstyle. Who cares? I would rather have the writers and the show give us more metaphysical concerns, because that's where the Numenorians get led astray by Sauron. It's where Celebrimbor gets led astray by Sauron. It's where the blue wizards have to go out to the far, far distant countries of the east.
Why are we talking blue wizards and short hair? Short hair.
Allow me to finish my sentence, and you will understand what I'm saying. Okay. Everything that is. Oh man, you made me lose it, Justin.
Yeah, everything has nothing to do with short hair. The writers.
It does. It has everything to do with it. Okay, I'm trying to tell you that it doesn't matter to me about a cosmetic thing, about the length or color of their hair. I would rather the show writers are giving us a story and characters' motivations and really interesting things that are honest, true to Tolkien, that represent Tolkien's metaphysical interests. The Blue Wizards were there to counteract Morgoth and the seeds of Morgoth.
You're going into a lore. This is not a lore stream. We're talking about hair.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying I don't want to spend any more column inches or any more of our airtime talking about short haircuts. It's not as interesting to me as the metaphysical content and the essence of the story, showing us what challenges the characters are facing and how they achieve greater things against their own, against their own selves. That's all I'm really interested in, really.
Before I get to the text messages about short-haired elves, you know what just occurred to me during this conversation?
What?
The bullet point we just talked about was elves in concentration camps, and now we're talking about elves with short hair. Maybe they're not unrelated.
Oh gosh, no.
If everything I've seen about concentration camps, all their heads were shaved, unwillingly.
No.
Maybe it's a story point with the concentration camps. I don't know, but I have a feeling that we're going to get pixie cut lead actors and actresses. In fact, you mentioned Nancy Steinman in the chat room, an artist. We had an artist again mock up some of the lead elves with short hair. So this is Morfydd Clark, who we know is playing Galadriel, and this is Robert Arameo, who we know is playing Elrond. And of course, there's Lenny Henry, that Photoshop that we just did. So here's a Photoshop from Nancy Steinman of what a short-haired Elrond and a short-haired Galadriel would look like, based on outfits from previous Lord of the Rings films. I'm okay with this look. In fact, this is awesome. This is a Galadriel that is ready for adventure, that is ready to get into some stuff. Like, I'm really liking the idea of a pixie cut Galadriel and Elrond that is high and tight, as we say in the military, right?
I think if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, I think the most likely thing would be just from my thoughts here is that it'd probably be characters we've not met before that would maybe have the short hair. So maybe, it's a way to help differentiate, when you're dealing with a lot of elven characters, how can you differentiate them? Like we saw Tauriel had red hair, which we hadn't seen before in an elf. It was a good way to differentiate her, and people immediately know who she is when they, even see, her in the foreground or something, or in the background. So yeah, I could see, who knows? Maybe we'll get a short-haired Celebrimbor or something. He doesn't want his hair to catch on fire in the forge or something like that.
I totally imagine Celebrimbor
Okay.
short hair. People in the chat room are saying, Matt, can you be our leader now?
Our leader? Lead
Yeah,
what? What am I leading?
I think the chat room wants me to exit the show, and you and Cliff can take it from here.
Funny. That's funny.
Hey, the final bullet point, and I'm really curious. I'm really curious on both your opinions. I'm really curious. The final bullet point is Sauron and or Anatar will not be revealed in season 1. Matt, what's your initial reaction to hearing this?
So my initial reaction was, I'm going to call that bluff. I don't think there's any way we go through an entire season without seeing Sauron. But the more I thought about it, and I tweeted this out earlier, the phrasing here, and I don't know, you guys wrote this, so maybe you can shed some light, but will not be revealed. I almost wonder, and I thought it would be pretty compelling if maybe there's a couple different people, everyone is going to know more or less that Sauron is going to be the big bad of this show. So what if it's a question
literally
mark?
Called Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Sauron is Lord of the Rings. And yes. I hate to break it to you all on Reddit that watching the show is called Lord of the Rings. End of story. It's Lord of the Rings. Jeff Bezos did not spend $1 billion to go to space. Well, he did. He did not spend $1 billion to not use the name, the most famous name in literature history.
For sure.
Okay.
So my question is, so my thought was, what if there's a couple different candidates, because not every elf is going to be this shining, beacon of, justice and fairness like an Elrond or a Galadriel. So what if we've got a couple different candidates, and most of the season we're left guessing, like, okay, that guy seems like that he's kind of shady. Maybe that's Sauron. And then the big reveal at the end of the season is who is actually Sauron.
Now you're thinking like a good TV writer. Yes, Matt, I think you've got it. If this rumor is true, then it's also true and false at the same time, that Sauron might be continually present, but not revealed. To at least not revealed in world, to the characters who are dealing with him and suffering. They might not, and the audience might get into the mystery. Can we determine who's really Anatar? Maybe the mystery will be a really delightful part of season 1. Maybe you're onto something. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, really.
Cliff, what, just on the surface, what was your initial reaction hearing this? I mean, can you tell the tale of Numenor, and can you kick this off for 8 episodes in the first season without talking about mentioning?
Yeah, because we've been talking about Miss Minutes for all 6 episodes of Loki, as if that is the greatest red herring in the entire Marvel Phase 4. Miss Minutes. Why? Because we know that character in the show Loki is not who she says she is, and there's something else behind it. So great. If they want to bring in Anatar in that kind of a fashion, it's going to fuel the mystery and the fan speculation that Sauron is very much present, and yet he's such a manipulator, just manipulating everybody, even the audience is being fooled for season 1.
Can Sauron take many forms, or is he stuck on a form? And is that form always humanoid? He can.
What? Wait, no. Matt knows this too. Sauron can turn into a vampire?
Vampire.
a fair form. He
Yeah.
can have.
We're
he
going
can be
underworld on this
So
thing.
so
Hold
no
on,
so
hold on.
to be
He can-
clear, vampire in Tolkien's world is like it's a giant bat. It's not like Dracula kind of
Yeah.
thing.
It's
So
a giant
just
man bat. Thing.
yes.
Yep. Yep.
N-
And keep
Are
going.
you guys
Wait.
putting me on right now?
No. Matt has done videos on his channel about this, Justin. Tell him, Matt, that Sauron is probably the one guy who's done more Loki-style physical transformations
Yeah.
than any.
The alligator Sauron?
So
Anagator? We're gonna
That
get
would-
Anagator?
that would
The
make
al-
a fun Funko Pop, I'm sure. But yeah, no, but Sauron in the first stage, we hear about him. He is like the Lord of Werewolves, and he transforms into a vampire, a giant bat, in order to try to escape Huon, the Hound, when he's defeated in battle. And and obviously,
there's an opportunity to get Sauron variants through the 5 seasons of this show.
If they want, Professor Tolkien literally said only a few of these changed, physical forms that he changed into, but there might be more.
I don't know if we'll see. I mean, I don't know what benefit there would be of him, what situation would call for him to transform into a werewolf or a bat, but
Matt, can I put a
Theoretically.
request in for your huge successful channel, Nerd of the Rings? Can you give me a lore video of all the forms that Sauron can take? I really need this.
I
really
will
want
definitely add that
alligator
to my list.
Sauron.
Alligators.
No, the alligator variant of Anatar. No, that's funny.
God. Well,
Okay.
Those are the 20 things that we're going to recap everything that we just went through.
We are?
But there were a few people in the chat room, and coming back to you right now, that we didn't really do a deep dive into the Ringmaker, Celebrimbor. Again, if we go back up, Celebrimbor, the Ringmaker, is going to be in season 1. Let me bring that up. Window capture. Okay, Celebrimbor, the Ringmaker, is going to be in season 1. A major character. Tom Budge was in the role. He has been recast. Now, the question is, who has he been recast? This was just announced July 1st. It is now July 20th. So 20 days ago, these 4 actors were announced as joining Lord of the Rings. They didn't say who these actors were playing, but my money is on number 2 here, Will Fletcher, playing Celebrimbor.
That might be an interesting guess, I guess.
Because if we look at Tom Budge, this is Tom Budge, and ignore the shot from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings that as a reforged Narsil. That has nothing to do with anything. But this is Tom Budge, who left the show, who's being recast as Celebrimbor, allegedly. My money is on Will Fletcher, the second face that you see in the screen, being Celebrimbor. He just looks like a jeweler, doesn't he? So
we'll see.
I've not met many ring forgers in person, so I can't speak from experience.
And the question is, if Sauron takes any form, do any of these 4 actors who just joined the cast, do they give you any hint of being Sauron or Anatar? Could Sauron be a child?
We don't know.
I don't have my
concept.
I don't have my aluminum hat here.
Yeah,
Properly have this
exactly.
conversation.
This is nuts. All right, I'll tell you what. I am thrilled mostly with a lot of these bits of information that we've confirmed. I'm thrilled that we've been able to confirm on the inside and the outside. And I'm kind of greatly interested in the fact that Amazon has not said anything yet.
No confirmation, no denial. I haven't gotten an angry email from them yet saying, "What are you doing? You've got it all wrong, you idiots." Nothing. We've heard nothing of Amazon. So this is all fan conjecture at this point. It all could be a ruse. It all could be a fake. But I have a feeling, again, let's go down this. I got it. Here's the final game of the night. All right. We're going to go through all 20 leaks, and each of you give me your percentage of accuracy, whether it's 90%, 50%, 0%. Okay. The first leak is, does Amazon have Unfinished Tales and the Silmarillion rights?
Well, it says confirmed on there.
Cliff,
So,
are you 100% on that? Are you standing by that?
Yeah, I'm going to absolutely stand by that, because why else would we have all those Instagram posts of the cast members literally they're telegraphing to us information.
Yes. Right.
And can we just appreciate the fact that, like, if the Tolkien estate is going to start licensing allowing people to adapt other things, I am really excited about a Children of Hurin adaptation of some kind. That's one of my absolute favorites. I would love that.
Amazon does have merchandising rights. I will go with that one.
Oh, for sure.
I'll go for 100% on that. Are you 100% on that?
Yeah, I'll go 100% on that, because why would they get into $1 billion licensing deal without ancillary rights?
Okay. There are 3 Tolkien scholars on production. I'm soft on that. I don't know who they are. There's no qualifications. We can't qualify it. So I'm gonna say like that's an 80%. Just what makes
what? I got an idea that maybe that changed. Maybe that was something that was happening early, but maybe that changed. Just like, there was an actor there, but then that changed and he left. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that there's at least been one throughout the production. I would hope. I think that would just be a smart move. I don't think at least I hope that Amazon doesn't invest $1 billion into a show without taking such a common sense step as to have a Tolkien expert involved.
Okay. Tolkien estate is said to be very happy with how things are progressing. Cliff, 0 to 100.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that, because I would have assumed that a long time ago. Even before, Justin, you were hearing some rumors that were confirming this, I would have figured on this, because they want that type of autonomy. The Tolkien estate has never had it. There were decades and decades and decades of adaptations from the Saul Zaentz original deal. And because of this new deal, I'd be quite surprised if the Tolkien estate was unhappy. Because if they were unhappy with anything, by now they would have made noise about it.
Yeah, I feel like there would have been delays non-COVID related. Especially if Tolkien estate has veto power, I feel like they would have pulled the plug on some things, and we'd be getting delays that were non-COVID related.
This is true. Real quick, in the chat room, people are saying Will Fletcher, the second person here that I think might be Celebrimbor recast. People in the chat room are saying, Andrew says, I don't really see him as a ringmaker. And Rory says he plays the royal secretary in The Crown. So if you want to see Will Fletcher in action, who's just been cast in Lord of the Rings, watch the latest season of The Crown on Netflix. All right, continuing on. Accuracy. Men, elves, and dwarves have their own sequestered production units. Does that sound right?
Well, I wasn't really thinking about it as a COVID thing until Matt said that, or both of you guys, I think, were talking about that.
I think someone in the chat room brought that up,
yeah,
but it makes total sense.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It does make sense. But then again, in terms of keeping their actors separated and siloed from each other, maybe that helps prevent leaks. Then again, maybe it didn't prevent any leaks at all, because we've been getting these leaks for a couple of weeks. So
yeah, and I'd buy that too. I think it makes sense too, because they're kind of divided geographically a lot during the Second Age. Like, I don't think, I think it would make sense that most of the scenes, if we see Moria, for example, it's going to be predominantly dwarves. So yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Bring it all back to the maps. Next thing, scripts are digitally shared among actors and crew. Cliff, you think that's true? You think they're not printing this out and Amazon's really tracking actors, making sure they don't share scripts?
Yeah, I think they're big on all kinds of, technology controls. Yeah, things that they never had before. I mean, back in the day, the most sophisticated protection mechanism that Peter Jackson had for a copy of his script was to use the fake title of Jamboree. And that's it. It said Jamboree on the cover. It had the seal of the Boy Scouts, and it said, a delightful coming of age tale in a summer camp or somewhere, and it's like the reason why they did that was because if a copy of the script, a physical printed paper copy of the script was sitting out there on the table or sitting on the desk, nobody would look at it. Nobody would walk past the room and think, I need to grab that. There's secret Lord of the Rings stuff inside. So yeah, that was the most advanced anti-theft mechanism they had, was to print a fake title page. I think
Matt, do you think this aligns with Amazon corporate culture?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think secrecy would be priority one, with any big production nowadays. I'm surprised there's not a retinal scan mentioned here.
Well, what do you think about the fake sets and fake production team, Matt?
That's pretty cool. I mean, I don't deny, I don't doubt it at all. I didn't realize it was so commonly practiced. Like you guys were talking about some of the Marvel movies and stuff. That seems like extreme measures to go through to set up an entire shoot somewhere else just to throw people off the scent. But I have to admit, it's pretty awesome.
Robert Hill in the chat room says Amazon tracks warehouse workers. They're absolutely tracking digital scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Robert. Next bullet point: main unit wrapped in April 2021. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go 100% with this because that's my bullet point. I think they're doing reshoots right now. I think they've sent most of the actors home.
Yes.
So
I agree with that. Hey, I just got a notification from CNN that said COVID flare-ups in the United Kingdom are causing havoc on their television and film production crews. And that spells very bad things for Neil Gaiman's massive The Sandman series.
Well, they'll be wrapped on that pretty soon. The next bullet
I hope so.
J.A. Bayona's episodes are a standalone entry point to the series. Matt, it sounded like you're pretty supportive of this concept.
Yeah, I think it's a cool concept. Like I said, I feel like you'd have to have a big property like Lord of the Rings, or we mentioned earlier that Clone Wars did this back in the day. I do wonder, we talked about the theatrical release, and I'm sure it's a big legal question, but we covered in our last stream talking about War of the Rohirrim and how Warner Brothers has film rights, but Amazon has series rights. So I wonder if, a theatrical release is even on the table for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think there is. Cliff, accuracy 0 to 100. Are there more directors and big stars yet to be announced?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
I agree with that rumor. And there's going to be other big magazines and other press outlets who are going to get some kind of exclusive.
They're going to get the exclusive
somewhere along the line. And I suspect Empire magazine might be the one that gets some beautiful magazine cover exclusive.
They're really nice. Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time are sharing crew and directors. Fellowship of Fans reported that, and I'm confirming that. That's 100%. And they are aiming for mid-2022 release. That's pretty much 100% at this point. We ain't getting no show this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next quick bullet points. Just halflings are dark-skinned precursors called Harfoots. What do you think of the accuracy of this rumor, Matt? 90%? 80%?
I'm going to say, you guys have the sources, so as a totally external person just looking at it, I'm going to say 50-50 on this. I could see.
Really? Okay.
Yes, I could see the halfling thing happening, but I could also see it being like a red herring just thrown out there to, just confuse people.
Cliff, what do you think? Are you 50%? Are you 80%?
No, I'm about 80, 85 or 90% on this rumor because I don't necessarily agree 100% with that stretching the timeline to accommodate bringing in people 1,000 or 1,500 years early. But then again, I do appreciate the fact that the TV series might be a little bit so dark, a little bit too dark. Maybe they need halflings
in tone
to elevate the overall story in tone. Yes, maybe.
Yeah, dark in tone, but also in complexion. Cliff, what do you think about Sir Lenny Henry being a halfling? Does that track with what you know about his comedic skills and the nature of Harfoots?
Remember how many excellent comedic actors that Peter cast in the Hobbit films?
For the dwarves? Oh yeah.
Most of his dwarves were really, really great comedic actors, and that was one of the reasons why we thought early on that Sir Lenny Henry might be a dwarf lord. But yeah, I'm going to sit with another 80 or 85% comfort zone that he's going to be a proto halfling, not a dwarf lord.
Matt, where are you at with Lenny Henry as a Harfoot?
So I'll say I don't know how the math works on this. I'm not a big math guy, but so if I'm 50-50 on the halflings thing, I'll say so if the halflings thing is true, I feel pretty confident. I would buy into the Lenny Henry being a Harfoot.
Very good. All right, Celebrimbor, the Ringmaker, is in the show. I'm 100% on that. You guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, duh.
Okay, moving on. Tom Budge was in that role. Do you feel that Tom Budge was Celebrimbor? Did your mind's eye ever consider Celebrimbor this face?
Maybe. With the right kind of hair, wig, makeup, and energy, you can transform, a very gentle giant like Richard Armitage into a psycho gold lusting dwarf who's lost his marbles. So yeah, you can do things like that.
This is not how I pictured the Ringmaker. Matt?
He reminds me of the guy from SNL. I don't know. I don't know his name, but there's a guy on SNL that looks a lot like this guy. And so that's what I originally thought of, honestly.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know. I don't get too deep into, trying to hypothesize. I just kind of wait and see when they start releasing photos and stuff.
Ice Trolls in the show. Where are you at confidence wise that this is true?
Well, I'm confident 100% that it's true because I saw that ice wall going on, and we've heard lots of rumors for many, many months about a big action scene in an icy, snowy, glacial environment. But I would be disappointed if they call it an ice troll. Why don't they just call it a troll? Yeah, like you said, Matt. Yeah.
All right. All right. Nudity is not sexual. It is concentration camp. How are you? What do you think about this rumor?
This is a great relief. It is a great relief to me because I did not want to, I can understand everybody's point of view on this, but I never wanted any sexualized content in this fantasy world.
Yeah, we've already discussed what you want. I'm asking you, how accurate do you think this rumor is? Is this 100%? Or do you think this is probably a 60% accurate? We just don't know.
I think it's 100% accurate.
Okay,
because
Matt.
I think it's 100% accurate.
What's your vibe?
I could just yield my time to Cliff and let him keep going here.
I'm sorry, Matt.
No, you're good. No, that was more a shot at Justin for cutting you off.
Okay, yeah.
I would say, so I'm going to go with like 80% because there's still part of me that hopes that even if they did concentration camp style visuals, that they wouldn't require nudity for that. Yeah.
Well, you know
But
what?
I totally am on board. Like Tolkien doesn't need sexualized nudity whatsoever.
The real conversation is this a flashback to the first age? We don't know if you know, Peter did
Changing the topic.
Peter did a flashback to thousands and thousands of years to the second age. So maybe Amazon will go back to the first age in a flashback. We don't know.
Every single word spoken by Galadriel in the first minutes of Lord of the Rings was not written by Tolkien. That was pure imagination of dialogue by Philippa and Fran. So,
but it's good dialogue.
It was good. It was great.
Good.
All right. Elves will have short hair. Accuracy to this rumor. I'm 100%, 110%.
That's a lot of percent, Justin.
Yes. I'm so confident in short hair Galadriel.
I don't know. I feel okay. So if we're going to talk about specific characters, I feel like Galadriel kind of has an iconic look. It would be kind of odd to give her a short haircut for no apparent reason. But I don't doubt that we could see short-haired elves though. Why not?
Okay, so you what like 70%? Yeah, elves will have short hair, but it'll be a mix of it'll be a variety of hairstyles.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
I heard the rumor that they had a bunch of wigs left over from Carnival Row, and they put them in a box and sent them down to New Zealand.
Oh, this is new information.
I'm just making a joke. I'm making a stupid joke. I'm sorry.
Cliff, do you think the elves are going to have short hair? Because no elf in Peter Jackson's world had short hair. I just want to know accuracy of this rumor. 100%, 90%? Where are you at?
I'm going to sit with a real comfortable 90% accuracy on the rumor, because maybe they just want to do something new that will distinguish themselves from the other 6 films. Maybe they just want to do a little something visually different.
And it could be a visual cue, you know, if we're dealing with different factions of elves or something.
The reason I'm 110% on short hair elves is, and not just shaved head, short hair concentration cap elves, is everything we've heard, Cliff, is that Amazon's cinematic universe and Peter Jackson's cinematic universe are separate. And this is an opportunity for Amazon to separate their world of Middle Earth, their legendarium, using similar characters like Elrond and Galadriel, but make them look unique to Amazon's legendarium.
Sure. That might be part of their interest in keeping more copyright control on the likenesses of the characters for toys, merch, collectibles, and things like that, because they will look different than other Kate Blanchett version of the characters.
So here's a good question this poses is, do you think that Amazon will err more toward differentiating or trying to be in line with the general look across the entire show? I'm talking like, you know, weapons, everything. Like, are they going to just be try to be totally different?
Yes.
Because that I feel like that's could be a big risk.
I don't think, unfortunately, I think it's a legal choice. I think this is a legal thing, not a creative choice. I think Amazon's original intent 3 years ago was to play nice with Warner Brothers, and I think the press releases 3 years ago were friendly to Peter Jackson's universe and used phrases like expand on the success. I think nuts and bolts, it didn't come down to it. I think Warner Brothers has staked a claim and is doing War of the Rohirrim, and New Line Cinema is back in action, and they're going to pursue more Lord of the Rings projects in Peter Jackson's world. And Philippa Boyens is already involved. So I think Warner Brothers basically said, nope, you cannot. And Amazon's like, but we've got Elrond and Galadriel. And I just have a feeling that Warner Brothers said, if you're going to make toys, they got to look different.
Indeed. I'm with that.
And it's not like Ninja Turtles where like Michael Bay can just say, give them noses and they look different. You know, like it's hard. It's hard, right? How do you make Galadriel look unique to Amazon? And anyway, and then the
I
final
mean, that
bullet
could be
point.
a wardrobe thing.
Yeah,
even.
it could
Yeah.
be wardrobe thing. And final bullet point for accuracy: Sauron will not be revealed in season 1.
Well, I am going to go with Matt's brilliant and very adroit observation that the key word is not revealed. Doesn't mean he won't be there as a very determined presence. It might be part of the enjoyable, tantalizing mystery of season 1.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll agree with Cliff agreeing with me.
So accuracy of this rumor that Sauron or Anatar will not be revealed in season 1.
I think like I said earlier, I don't think there's any chance we go an entire season of the show and Sauron/Anatar makes no appearance whatsoever. We might not know who it is, or the characters within the show might not know who it is. But yeah, I don't see us going full.
Hold on. What's going to happen is by the time we get to near the very, very end of season 1, we're going to get this whole "it was Agatha all along." That's what
song and dance. Yeah.
No,
we're going to get this
season
whole
2.
It was Sauron all along.
See, that's season 2. I'm telling.
That's going to happen at the end of season 1. I think they're going to reveal some of the mystery. Maybe.
I'm of the opinion. Let's get to the end of season 2 before there's a reveal, because I think the general television audience is going to be introduced to a new era of Middle Earth with like Numenor and ships and battles and like Themyscira looking visuals of like horseback bow and arrow stuff, like stuff we haven't seen before. And there's going to be no discussion about the end of the world. There's going to be no discussion about rings and power and the one ring that doesn't exist yet. So I think the idea of like the hardcore fans like you guys are going to know that Sauron is in this show somewhere, but the most of the people are just not going to know. It's kind of like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. Like, I had no idea about the Red Wedding, and then it happened, and I'm like, oh my, what? Did they just do that? So I think the reveal of Sauron is Lord of the Rings, is Amazon's red wedding moment that is going to blow up television. And I look forward to that.
I just don't think they can afford to wait till season 2 to do it, because the casual fans will be waiting to see the main villain, and I don't know if you can go a full season without having a true villain in your show, unless you're then you just have to answer the question, who's the villain then?
The King of Numenor. There's a bunch of villains
possible.
Okay.
All right, Cliff, this has been a huge scoop. And again, I want to remind everybody that these rumors are just a taste of the rumors that have been coming at us for the last 6 weeks. Since they wrapped, we're not going to reveal our sources. We haven't revealed our sources in 21 years. But if you've got something to share, our DMs are open on all the socials. So you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook. The email address is on the website, Spy Master. If you want to give us a spy report, big or small, spymaster@theonering.net is the email, and we will fact check it as much as we can. But we don't know all the details, but we can, just like we just did now, we can get a gauge of accuracy on it. And we want to hear from everybody. If you hear some juicy nuggets of information because your sister's cousin's uncle's nephew was an extra on the Dwarven set in Moria and saw something, go ahead and tell us. We'll never reveal where it came from. Okay. And I know a bunch of people hate that we ask for spy reports, but this is the whole thing. We're not as talented as Matt here at Nerd of the Rings, who can just create out of whole cloth excellent content. We rely on you to to give us excellent content. Matt, where can people find you?
They can find me on I'm on all the most of the social medias, Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. My main channel obviously is here on YouTube, youtube.com/Nerd of the Rings. And I have new episodes every Saturday at noon Eastern time.
You heard it here. He's one of the fastest growing Tolkien YouTube accounts. And it's been amazing to see your content just excel in the conversation.
I'll say, and well deserved. And also, I've got to say another acknowledgement. That's really, really cool of you to come and join us and share your brain pan with us, Matt. Thank you so much for that.
Well, I have to say, I really appreciate it as well. When I first got into Lord of the Rings, it was after Fellowship came out. I think I've said it on the last live stream, but it was right after Fellowship came out on DVD. Was the first time I was ever introduced to Tolkien. I stumbled upon the OneRing.net because I had no idea why the movie just ended. And they did not destroy the ring. I was like, what the crap is going on with this movie? And I discovered the OneRing.net. For years, I would check it daily to find news on the Lord of the Rings and then later the Hobbit films. So I've been a fan of the OneRing.net for a long time, reading you guys, following along with the production of Peter Jackson's film. So it is great to be talking to you guys.
We're still having as much fun now as we were then, and it's just been wonderful to have everybody in the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and everybody. That's why we keep doing these live streams. We love the conversation with you guys. I love all the text messages. Again, if you are watching this later, our hotline's always open. So give us a text message, and I want to hear what you guys think of the show and all these.
And I also want to say thank you to the little spies and the little birds who land on our windowsill from time to time, and they help us cross-check and cross-reference things so that we don't always have egg on our faces. But I'm also glad to be the single most embarrassed, I'm the most chagrined man in Tolkien fandom. Today is my day to be the most chagrined, really lame, all that stuff that I was worried about and screaming about, nudity. Well, guess what? There's not going to be sexualized content, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm so grateful I was wrong. And
maybe they listened to you. Maybe it was there, and they listened to you.
Never know. Oh yeah, I want to say thank you to all the little birds that share secrets. We will always protect your identity, and we will never ever lose integrity with that. Thanks.
Cliff, don't be too hard on yourself. It's been wonderful to get your expert opinion, and boy, based on what we've learned today, I wonder if that will influence Matt's future videos. And Cliff, I'm sure you'll have some great editorials coming up exploring just what this means to Tolkien's legacy and Tolkien's lore. This is Torn Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday. We're usually not this long, but boy, oh boy, there was a lot to cover. Thank you, Matt, for staying with us for almost 2.5 hours. Cliff, as well, thank you so much. Why don't you take us out, Cliff?
Hey, everybody. Thank you again. Always. The only reason why we're here is because there's a worldwide community of fans, That's what Matt's going to say too. The reason why Matt is in the rarefied air that he's in right now is because we have a community of people who love J.R.R. Tolkien as much as we do. And with that shared passion, also we're bouncing that energy with the producers, the actors, and the craftspeople working down in New Zealand. We want to share that unbridled enthusiasm that the fans are famous for. So from our community down to New Zealand, we send you love. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing. Keep up the good job. And we, we're very intrigued by what's going on. That's for sure. We are very intrigued. We got lots to talk about in the coming months. So until then, stay safe. Keep yourselves sane, if you can stay sane for a little while in this crazy world. Until next Tuesday, 5 p.m., where you can find us again here at Torn Tuesday, and do us all a big solid and go see Matt's stuff and tell him how good his graphics are and his maps. You guys, okay, go and do that for Matt, okay? Are you there, Matt?
Yes, thank you.
Good. That's God. I'm trying to hear you. I'm waiting to hear you giggle or laugh or something. Anyways, all right. We love you guys so much. Until next Tuesday, I want to say good night and good luck, or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Man, I kind of wanted Eyes Wide Shut Middle Earth.